Well, welcome everybody to Chris Taylor, Wild Satsang. If you're on YouTube, you can type in your questions in the chat for Chris, or you can join us in the Zoom and ask him yourself. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So, I want to talk about true nature and what is true nature and pure. I wrote pure beingness, pure energy, pure isness, and then abide in that. So I want to know about abiding and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Like I never try to give anybody a stepwise procedure. I never try to give anybody something that's somehow wrapped in magical thinking. I try to always point to what is absolute, what is actually here. And if we think about what is actually here, I used to think that there is a person here named Chris. What's clearly now the case is that there's a consciousness here and that everything is simply that. And so this consciousness that's here that used to identify with this contraction called Chris is the same essence, the same self that's over there that thinks it's Walter. But really, this entire identity called Walter is a contraction within, or an identity within, just pure consciousness. And so that's what kind of dissolves. It's the belief structure in a separate identity. And when that happens, when that dissolves, when that dissipates, all of a sudden, Walter still exists, Chris still exists, but it's not you. It's not, there's no ownership over it. It's just consciousness doing things. It's consciousness being things. And the consciousness here is the same as the consciousness there. And that is the self. That is the absolute. That's the base layer of reality. That's the nature of reality. That is everything. And we could stop right there. And if when I say abide, I just mean just stop there. Just stop right there, sit there. And then all of a sudden, things may or may not begin to dissipate into simply this.
Yeah. You said the self evaporates.
Yeah, it actually it's sometimes I say evaporates, sometimes I say there's like an energetic release, because in the body there's such a belief structure in the body, in the person's self identity, that when it's released, sometimes it releases in strange ways that feel like there's an energetic just boom, and then all of a sudden it's not a Chris sitting here speaking. It's just consciousness doing all these things. And so like I say, it can happen differently for everybody, but oftentimes there's some sort of weird felt sense of evaporation or dissipation into just this pure consciousness here. And even to say here isn't true. I'll continue to catch myself in slightly untrue verbiage. It's not even here. There's no locality to it. There's no time to it. It's just the isness. And of course, time apparently happens through it, in it, and spatial dimensions happen in it, through it, but it's really just all a subcomponent of that. It's really just consciousness. And that consciousness is the best word that I have. Some people use pure awareness or pure being or isness, all that is. Religious terminology would use the word God. It's all the same thing. It all points to simply this base layer that is eternal, and you are that.
Mm-hmm. And so, is there a difference in your life since before and after this non-event?
Yes, absolutely. And the biggest difference is that it's not my life. It's just life living. It's just consciousness, like apparently living a life. But yes, to answer the question as intended, as how I know you meant the question, is yes, absolutely. No matter what happens, this freedom is here. No matter what happens, this sort of isness as bliss is here. And like, really, no matter what happens, it is simply that. And there's no, every once in a while there will be, some sort of energetic contraction. If somebody, jabs you in the chest and and says something mean to you, for example, all of a sudden it seems like all this energy goes back into this like person, this person identity is like, oh wow, I need to defend myself. And so that can still apparently happen, but for in large part, that doesn't happen. It isn't that, because there's just no real belief that I am this Chris body mind identity. It's very clear that that is just an apparition in consciousness, and I am just this consciousness. It's just so, it's so clear. It's indisputable. There's nothing that like any attempt at convincing myself that it's not just this is another idea within just this.
Is it but it's not just a matter of shifting beliefs, right? Or
No,
just adopting a new set of ideas.
not at all. And adopting the new set of ideas is what the seeker journey is all about. The seeker adopts new and larger concepts up to a point where they think they'll be able to jump off a cliff and it'll just be purely isness. And maybe they will, but those stepwise things, they do lead to greater and greater senses of freedom, but all of that is still already this. And so this is how intimate, this is how close you are to what has traditionally been called enlightenment. It's just realizing that whoever is thinking about this, whoever is trying to get this, is already this. And that makes no sense to the mind, but it just is. It is the way it is. And you realize this when everything that apparently was between you and this dissipates. And it dissipates into just this.
Yeah, so there's only apparent blocks to this because it's already this. But there seems to be, for the seeker, something in the way of seeing this or experiencing this, or abiding in this, or even none of those words really make sense because there is nothing separate to abide in something else. It's just all of that.
Perfect. And if you could just stay there, maybe weird energetic things might happen, maybe not, but that's all I point to. That's all I bring people to, is just that what you just said. I would just have somebody just sit in that realization, and what I've seen happen is things tend to happen, and it's just the release of ideas, and with the release of ideas comes a release of energy, and a release into nothingness, a release into boundlessness. It isn't becoming a larger thing. It isn't becoming an angel. It isn't becoming a god. It isn't becoming a saint, a guru, a prophet, a miracle worker, an alien, whatever ideas are out there. It isn't becoming a larger thing. If those things happen, it's still just an apparent happening within just this. And it's still just a contraction of energy.
So you help people over there at Wild Satsang? What do you do? One-to-one sessions or anything like that? Or
actually, right now I don't do anything.
Okay.
I do have a Patreon that I only recently started because people wanted to ask direct and personal questions that they didn't necessarily want to put in the YouTube comments. They wanted to be more anonymous for whatever reason, and I respect everybody's privacy. And so Patreon was a way to do that. And right now I'm just engaging in text with those people, helping them personally along their way. But otherwise, everything is provided freely on YouTube, and people are more than welcome to write in the comments anything, any personal hang-ups or ideas they might have about this, and bounce them off of me. and I'll answer everybody as freely as I can. Obviously, I was a little bit late to this meeting because I do have a full-time job, and so time is of course limited. So hence the reason for Patreon. But I've been asked a lot of times to do one-on-ones or to do live sessions, and it was a little bit hard for us to nail down a date, only because I really just don't have a whole lot of time to do that. Maybe in the future I that might change, and at that point I will, but at the moment, no. It's just YouTube and Patreon if you want to be incognito about it.
Okay. I just asked because I was curious, like, how do you help someone, to see this, to realize this for themselves, if that's a way of putting it. How could you guide someone or point them in the right direction?
Yeah, I'm hoping that the YouTube videos do that, and the comments that I see in the YouTube videos point to that. There are people having real awakenings in the comments, and it's very evident. You really can't fake this. Even if you know the right words to say, this is very energetic. And when somebody is trying to say the words, but it's just a person saying these words, it's not it. And people that pretend to have this or pretend to get this are really only doing themselves a disservice, because you can't fake freedom, and you can't fake love, and you can't fake bliss. You can't fake boundlessness. Maybe you can to somebody who hasn't tasted it, but those that do and have, it's whether or not they've truly become liberated is a non-topic. It's a non-issue. Really, I know Ram Dass used to say this thing that I really love, and he said, we're all just walking each other home. And so as you're walking home to this, our pure nature, there will be people along the way with signs and be like, it's this way, it's this way, it's this way, it's this way. And really, as long as they're pointing to this consciousness in which all directions exist, that's all I care about, because that is who and what you are. That is where you are. You're right here. And you don't need to travel anywhere for peace, and you don't need to travel anywhere for your own nature. It's right here, and it couldn't be anywhere else.
I wanted to ask, I think you said earlier, though, something about maybe there's a lot of glimpses and maybe realizations of the no self. There's no one here, and it's kind of like, wow, there's no one here. It's an sort of amazing realization, and then go start making YouTube videos, and a lot of people might say, well, a lot of people are going to say this regardless, but that you're not fully cooked yet, and it might not be the end of the pathless path, let's say. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Right. To ever say that I'm fully cooked or I'm like reached some sort of end, there's really there's no knowing of this. It's just all pure mystery. So whatever happens is just part of that isness, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't. I'm not a seer. I'm not a mystic. I'm not any of these crazy things. I've just dissolved the self into just the boundless isness of pure consciousness. And whether or not anybody claims to be fully cooked or not is it it doesn't even register as like a worrying thing. It's just part of the isness.
Yeah. No, I don't hear anyone saying they're fully cooked. I just see a lot of sometimes comments or criticism saying, let's just say it was premature to go out there and start spreading the gospel.
Well, I think there is something to that. I think there is something to that, because as long as there is a sense of personhood here, as long as there's a sense of identity here that's owned, like an owner or a doer, if there's even a hint of that, as you begin to share and provide things, what tends to happen sometimes is somebody will then identify as a teacher or someone who sees, someone who has something that others don't have. And that's, of course, not true. But there can be, if there's even a little bit of identification, if you begin sharing the message or preaching the gospel, as you say, there's often a lingering sense of self that will grab onto that and will be like, okay, now I'm the one that shares this message like this. Or like oftentimes what happens is somebody will say, it's not me, but the message is coming through me. Well, then, okay, you're still identifying as a special vessel, and there's not that either. But but they can only be harming themselves. Like, really, if you want this, it's the release of any specialness. There is no specialness. There isn't. It doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to say it's coming through me, I mean, you have to at least recognize it's coming through every thing.
Absolutely.
It's not certainly not special, but it's not just coming through me. It is me. It is you. It is, I mean, there are no separate things anyway. So it just appears to be so.
Right.
I mean, what do you think about that? Like, it's all an appearance, but there's no solidity to anything, actuality.
Oh, absolutely. There is no solidity to anything. Like, as hard as I can knock on this desk, as hard as I can knock on this, all of this tactile feeling sensation, all this solidity, all of the isness that I think is super solid is still just a happening in consciousness. It's just that. It's just another flavor of consciousness. And we apply specialness to it. We say, oh, this is a body and it has a certain solidity to it, and this is a desk and it has a certain solidity to it. And of course it feels different when I go like this and I go like this, and so there's a difference there in those sensations. However, those sensations happen within what are they? It's their consciousness. Like, it's different degrees. It's everything is the same thing, but to different degrees. Like, but the different degrees only exist within a singular essence, and that is consciousness. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I'm just the consciousness part. I guess that's the part I don't really understand. Is like, how do we know anything about consciousness at all? It just seems like a label or another word, but I don't really know what consciousness is.
Good. Stay that way. Because if you thought you did, then you don't. You need to let some things be a mystery, and consciousness is one of those things. It is the mystery. It's the living mystery. Consciousness is the living mystery.
Yeah.
And to the degree to which you can sit in the living mystery is the degree to which you'll find this. Find self as this.
We have a question from Daryl Sanders. He says, since it's always been this, then what dissipates?
In the illusion. It's just an illusion. It's an illusion within consciousness that dissipates. If you've watched my YouTube videos, one of the things that I say often is the distance between you and this is the width of a thought. What is the width of a thought? What is the distance there? Of course, there's no distance. What could be the dimensions of a thought? Like what could be the width or length or size or heaviness of a thought? There aren't dimensions to a thought. So there is no distance. There's actually nothing that dissipates but the illusion. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not very well studied in non-duality or anything like that. But I think one of the things that clicks when you get here is one of these stories that Ramana Maharshi used to share, and it's that snake and rope story. So you believe the rope on the floor to be a snake, right? And all of these visceral reactions happen in response to that. Oh no, there's a snake. You might try to kill it. You might try to run. Either way, there's this upwelling of fear and like, oh shit, it's a snake. But then when the light is turned on and you're able to see it more clearly, you're like, oh, it's just a rope. And so what were all those reactions for? There was a felt sense of terror or fear or whatever there was, aggression. There was all these ideas about what it was. It was a snake, but it all turned out to just be a rope when the light is turned on. And that's kind of what happens upon awakening. The light turns on and all of a sudden it's like, oh, everything is just this.
Well, why do you think that process has to be gone through anyway? Like this whole waking up, this dream, this mystery of thinking I'm the liver of my life, I'm the doer of my actions, I'm the author of my destiny, and then this non-event happens and that's all seen through, and it's just this, it's just happening, it's just life living itself, and just a mysterious happening with no cause, no effect, nothing behind it, no source for it.
Well, I have no idea why it happens, but it does. And what seems to be the case is consciousness goes to a movie that is called your life. And then at the end of the movie, we would call awakening. It would be like, oh, you walk out of the movie, right? And then all of a sudden there's whatever happened in the movie, happened in the movie. But it's just consciousness going to the movie that was called Chris, is called Walter. And then at some point, if awakening apparently happens, consciousness walks back out of the movie. And if there could be said to be a why, there isn't. I'll tell you right now, there isn't. But if there could be said to be a why, it would be because movies are more fun when you're invested, when you believe them, right? If every time you're watching a movie, something interesting happens, or something scary happens, or something terrible happens, or something great happens, if every time you saw something like that, you'd be like, it's just a movie. It wouldn't be as fun, that's for sure. And I'm not saying consciousness does this for fun, because there is no reason. But I'm just saying that's a decent analogy, maybe.
Well, I wonder, without reason or purpose, or ultimately nothing's happening. And then sometimes people hear that message and it seems hopeless and like, well, what's the point of my life and why should I bother, and this kind of thing. So, what do you say to that? If it's
Yeah.
being heard in that way, like it all just seems like useless,
Well,
meaningless.
if I were to give you hope, I would be giving you more energy for the illusion. I would be giving you more food for the false. And I don't intend to do that.
Hmm.
I point to the freedom from that. And yes, there is freedom, and there is love, and there is bliss, and there is somehow aware aliveness for nobody, for no reason. And it's the most beautiful thing that could ever be.
And you talk about intelligence. So, if you could speak to that, like,
Sure. Well, this is
yeah,
this ground of being as
yeah,
consciousness, as just pure consciousness, is where all intelligence rises from. And when I say intelligence, I don't distinguish between human intelligence and other forms of intelligence. You know, there's an intelligence that grows the seed into a flower. There's an intelligence there, right? Like that's pretty amazing. Like the smartest person could not take a seed and intentionally grow it into a flower. Like there's intelligence encapsulated in that seed that grows it into a plant, grows it into a flower. There's an intelligence in a leaf that knows how to photosynthesize and send sugars to the plant to grow. There's intelligence that's everywhere. Everything is intelligent. Everything is intelligence. If I say everything is intelligent, it makes it sound like a thing has intelligence. It's not that. Intelligence just is laced in consciousness.
Daryl asks, how can you know that there's no purpose?
It just becomes self-evident. That it's not that there's anybody here that knows that. It's just what is. This can be very frustrating to a mind to hear these types of things, but you're not your mind. You're just the consciousness that is minding at the moment.
It almost seems intelligence implies there's a purpose, like the seed has a purpose to grow and, lean towards the leaves lean towards the sun, and there's a water table underground and reaching out for water, and it is this whole life and purpose. It seems the purpose is for it to live.
Sure. We could say anything within this story. We could say yes, within the story, there's purpose playing out, there's meaning playing out, there's identity playing out, there's separate objects playing out, but that's all within the story. And the story is constructed upon a base layer reality that is just pure consciousness. So we could talk endlessly about how intelligent the atom is. We could talk endlessly about how awesome it is that, the universe has these players within it, has these characters within it that are so intelligent. And we could talk that's what science is. Science is constantly looking. It's intelligence investigating intelligence, but that's all it is. It's just consciousness investigating consciousness. And so we could talk endlessly about the players playing out with meaning and purpose within the story. But what non-duality is about, what liberation is about looking outside the story as to what is the story constructed out of? What is it made of? Ultimately.
Yeah. Thoughts. Would you say thoughts or consciousness?
What exactly is the question? I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, you say the story is made out of, I would say, thoughts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
A flower doesn't have thoughts, but a flower still has reactions. There's an intelligence there. But yet, consciousness seems like, if we're talking about evolution, for example, consciousness seems to get more and more complex up to the point where it can look at itself. And so what we're doing, what meditation is simply folding consciousness back on itself, looking at what consciousness is. But up to that point, there's all these storylines that play out. And for a while, there's no thoughts, there's just beingness, you know. I don't know where thoughts arise, at what level thoughts arise. Maybe it arises in the plant life, maybe it arises in fungal life, maybe it arises in some sort of later animal life. I don't know, but that's all within the story, and that's all just the play of consciousness. But at some point here on the human level, consciousness has become so complex that it folds back on itself and looks at itself and then understands what this all is. And that would be awakening.
Daryl Sanders asks, isn't intelligence a concept?
Yes. Everything's a concept. Even when I say consciousness, that's a concept. What I've tried to point you to is just this space of being in which no concepts arise. There's nothing that could be between you and direct reality. Like right now, it could be said that Chris is sitting in this chair. It could be said like that. But really what's happening is consciousness is just there's just this apparent happening. It's just apparently happening. There's just no one sitting in the chair. There's just sitting in the chair. There's a big difference between me knocking on this desk and just knocking on this desk. And when you really feel into just what actually is present on a raw level, like a bastardization level is Chris is knocking on this desk. But a closer to true thing to say here is there's just knocking on this desk. And then a truer thing to say is there's just a movement of consciousness. And then a truer thing to say would be everything that's happening is actually arising from nothing. There's just so many different degrees of conceptualization that we can have. But when you really get here, you realize that sound is the movement of silence somehow. Like movement itself is taking place entirely within stillness. Everything is happening entirely within non-happening. And this is realized directly by nobody, because when that happens, there's nobody to look at it. It's just what it is.
Perfect. Yeah, man. That really sums it up. Just seems like layers of stories and concepts and ideas, but sometimes people will say it's not just an idea, it's actually a felt sense or an energy in the body, and I don't know, what do you think about that? Like some kind of energetic release, or like this contraction.
Yeah,
But
well, how I was kind of saying, like, everything is the same thing, everything is one thing, just differing in degree. Same with energy and thought. Energy really is just on the same, it's the same thing as a thought, just to a different degree. It's just not a conscious thought. Like, we think of thoughts as being like an idea in the head, but even like an energy in the body, it's really just the same thing. Just not, it's just not an idea in the head. It's an idea in the body, for example. Like, the body is having an idea and it's felt energetically. So the mind isn't getting it, but the body's getting it, and it's just another idea. It's just another expression. Just like
I
a
see.
thought, the body's doing the same thing. Like, the mind thinks, the body feels, but those are the same thing, but just happening on a different plane.
Yeah.
So one of the, so I was gonna say, that's the reason this old traditional practice of neti neti is important, or can be really useful, because it's like, it's that concept of saying not this, getting towards the absolute, like what is actual ultimate reality. And so, like, an idea comes or a thought comes, okay, not this. And you can do the same thing with the energy in the body. Okay, it's not this. Like, even like, sure, that might be, it's all apparently happening. I'm not ever going to dismiss any of it. It's all happening, apparently. But it's all just one thing happening. And so until you get to that one thing is everything, neti neti, not this, not this, not this. Like, we can make all sorts of conceptualizations about what everything is. But if what you want is liberation, then cut it with the stories and just get to what it's all made of.
Is that so? But that almost seems like it's something somebody can really do. I mean, cut it with the stories and all that.
Yeah, it'll feel like you're doing it for a while. Then all of a sudden there will be just doing it. It'll just be happening. And then what happens is, what apparently happens is, the belief in somebody doing the thing evaporates. Although the thing might continue to happen. Like, I continue to go to work. I continue to do my job. I continue to do all these things, but there's absolutely no belief in a me that's doing these things. This is just the movement of consciousness. Apparently. Apparent movement. Like I said, a movement is just stillness, apparently moving, appearing to move. Everything is always just here, unmoving.
So there's going to be a book 2?
Well, yeah. So the reason I made it book 1 is because I have like 4 or 5 notebooks that came after what ended up in that book that I just haven't transcribed yet. They're all written. I think they're up at my bookshelf. And yeah, at some point I'll type those out and put those out. So yeah, at some point, I mean, they're already written. They're just not transcribed into digital text.
And that's available on Amazon.
Yeah.
You can get a Kindle version too, I think.
Yeah. I've made them both as cheap as I possibly could. I think the Kindle version, I don't know, is maybe like, it's free if you have, I don't know, some version of Kindle, and and I think it's like 99 cents or something like that if you're new to Kindle, maybe. And then I forget how much this is on Amazon. But if you don't like reading, I try to put everything as freely as possible on YouTube. So I never am intending a paywall. Of course, like I said, time is limited, and so there's Patreon if you want to be, if you don't want to air your business out there along your awakening journey. if you want to have a more private discussion, we can meet on Patreon. But yeah, like I said, I try to put everything out there as freely as possible, and I'll continue to do that to the best of my ability.
Wonderful. And that's a wildsatsang.org.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Anywhere else you want people to go? YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube's probably the main one. Everything else is just clipped. Like, for example, TikTok is just little clipped versions of the YouTube videos. And then the podcast, I think it's on all major platforms, is really just the audio version of the YouTube videos that I just turn into an MP3 and put them out there. So I try to make everything as available as possible, whatever your preference is and how you consume media.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Chris. I appreciate it.
Of course, Walter. Thanks so much for connecting.
All right. Take care.